So now I'm going to record Daf Mem Aleph Amid Aleph and Amir Hashem Mem Aleph Amid Beis. Amar Reb Zeira says, "V'no chazite l'Rabbi Abahu." I saw Rabbi Abahu when he was bathing. Sheniach yodav keneged panav shel mata. That he had his hands in front of his erva. V'lo yadana noga lo noga. I'm not sure whether he touched himself or not. When asked pshita lo noga, certainly he didn't touch himself. The Tanya learned in a brayser of Lezer Aimer kol ha'echos ba'ama mashtin kilu meiving ma'b'loilim. We learned the Gemara. The Lezer says in a brayser, whoever holds himself when he's urinating is like he would bring a mabul to the world, because when he touches himself, he may stimulate himself and may come to loitzos zera. Amar Abaye says no, there's no kasha. Asur kibalshis. The idea is similar to the army. What's the army all about? The Tanakh is a mission of Erizara. By Leshes Shenichnas Le'ir, if the army comes into town, B'shas Sholem Chaviyos Yaim Psuchais Asurais and Stumais Mutaris. If it's in peacetime, so all the barrels of wine that are open, I feel that the Goyim had enough time to stick their hands in and to be menasachet for the purpose of Avodah Zarah, so it's open. But the sealed barrels, they wouldn't have opened, and they're safe, they're okay. If it's during wartime, even the open barrels are okay, because since it's in wartime, they have no time now to go play with open barrels to go be menasach yain. Alma, you see, given to be sila menaschi. So you see, since soldiers in wartime are scared, they have no time to play around and to have in mind nisach hayayin. So Hanami given the boys le'osa le'huri. Here also, Rabbi Abo, since he's frightened, he's not going to come to be mahar, even if he touches himself. Where's the fright? Biasusa the nahara, when you're in the river and you're bathing, you're afraid of drowning. So therefore, people who are in the river, even when they cover themselves and touch themselves, they won't come to hear her. Aini, is it true? But would he cover himself? Rabbi Abba said, B'Shem Ravuna, B'Shem Rav, whoever puts his hands covering his erva is as if he's denying the fact that he's circumcised, like he's ashamed of his circumcision. When you're going towards the river, so you're not facing anybody, so then you wouldn't cover yourself because there's no tznius. Hakisolik, when you're coming out of the river, so then people may cover themselves because of tznius. When Rava came out of the river, he bent over in order to cover himself. Reb Zeira Zokiv, Reb Zeira stood up straight. He didn't care because he felt that he's not ashamed of having brisa shel Avram Avinu. Rabbanan de Ravashi, ki konachsi zakvi, ki kosal ki shachi. The Rabbanan who were in Bismerish of Ravashi, when they went towards the river, there was no one seeing them. They would walk straight. When they came out, they would bend. So there are two views. On the way into the river, for sure you don't have to cover yourself because nobody's seeing you. And on the way out, there are different people. Some people were, because of tznius, covered themselves, and some didn't. So Rabbi Bo covered himself. I'm not sure if he touched. Even if he would have, he wouldn't have come here because he's scared coming out of the river of maybe a wave coming and drowning him. Reb Zeira was trying to avoid Rav Yehuda because Reb Zeira wanted to make Aliyah to Israel. And Rav Yehuda Rav Yehuda's opinion is that to go from Bavel to Eretz Yisrael, you violate a mitzvah saseh. Well, it's an essay in Navi. Shenemar, the pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, Perek Chav Zayin, Vavela Yuvo V'Shamayu. They'll be brought to Bavel, and they should stay there until I redeem them. So since Bavel is a Mokum Torah, you shouldn't leave there. So Reb Zeir figured, you know what, Ezel Eshma Mine Milsa, and Ve'esi Ve'esik. Let me at least go to the Beis Medrash or somewhere where Rav Yehuda is and hear a Dvar Torah from him, and then I'll just leave. It could be because the Gemara says in Brachas, K'shenifter Adam Echaver Al Yifter El Mitav Dvar Alocha Shem Mitav Kach Zachreyu. When you're leaving a scholar, you should leave from a Dvar Alocha, and you'll remember by that Alocha. So Reb Zeir felt even if he's not going to actually talk to Rabbi Yehuda, but at least if he hears a Dvar Halacha from Rabbi Yehuda, he'll remember him. So Reb Zeira went and he found Rav Yehuda standing in a bathhouse. The Kamer Leila Shamoy, and he told the Shamas, Havili Neser, give me a Neser, some detergent, some type of soap, cleansing material. Havili Masrei, give me a comb. Pischu pumaychu vapiku havla. Open your mouth so that your internal heat goes out, so that the heat of the merchets will go in. And the ishtu mimayid bebani, and drink some hot water also. Omar Zerb said, "Oh, that's wonderful. Ilmale basi elu mishmai davar zeh dayai." If I only would have come to hear this, would have been enough. Besides which, that I get a Vartayr to say goodbye with, I also heard something that's very important for me. Gemara says, "Bishlam Aviya Nasser Aviya Masrik." What did he learn from when Rav Yehuda says, "Bring me some soap or some detergent, or bring me a comb"? Kamashma and Dvarim Shalchayil Mutar Laim Rambal Shen Kaidish. As long as it's not divrei Torah, you're even allowed to speak Hebrew, because Rav Yehuda spoke Hebrew. Pischu P'maychu V'Apiku Havla Nami Kedishmul. That he told everybody, open your mouth and let your internal heat go out and the heat from the merchets go in. That taught us what Shmuel said. Amar Shmuel Havla Mapik Havla. That the heat of the bathhouse should push out your internal heat, your sweat, or whatever it is that your internal heat, which was not a clean heat, and take in a clean heat. But to drink the water from hot water, what's the benefit of that? The Tanya, because we learned in a brisa, if somebody eats and doesn't drink, his eating is like blood. It's a bad thing. It'll cause stomach sickness. If somebody eats and he doesn't walk 4 amas, the food will rot in his stomach. It won't be digested properly. And that's going to cause bad breath. If somebody needs to go to the bathroom and eats before he relieves himself, it's like a stove that you heat it up with new wood when it still had ashes from the previous cooking. And your body, when it sweats, will give off a bad smell. If you bathe in hot water but you don't drink some hot water, it's like a stove that was heated from the outside, wasn't heated on the inside. So if you bathe, which is heating you on the outside, you should also drink some hot water, which heats you on the inside. If you bathe in hot water and don't take a cold shower after, it's like iron that you put it in fire, so you soften it, and then you didn't put it in cold water in order to strengthen it. And if you bathe yourself in hot water and you don't apply oil afterwards, it's like water that'll run off a barrel. Like this, if you bathe yourself in hot water, you put oil on yourself afterwards, it'll retain the hot water or the benefit of the bath in you. Anyway, so we see a person's taking a hot bath should also drink some hot water, so he has heating both from the outside and from the inside. Look to Mishnah Mulyar Hagaruf. If you have a hot water kettle, which used to have, as the Gemara explains, which used to have a container of coals around its outside, but you cleared out the coals from that mulyar, from that container, you're allowed to drink from on a Shabbos, because this mulyar is not considered Ma'asev Hevel, it's only Mekayim Hevel. Since you took the coals out Erev Shabbos, so it's only Mekayim Hevel, so it's okay. We'll explain in a second. But Antichi, which is a different kind of hot water kettle, which we'll see in the Gemara, Af Bishagrufa, even though you cleared the coals out, and Shoisen Amena, you're not allowed to drink from it, because this Antichi, as we'll see in the Gemara, is Ma'asev Hevel, even when you take the coals out of it. The issue we need to understand here is that L'chayra, Shehiyah was mutter. According to Chananya, Shehiyah was mutter even if something was only cooked a third or a half of its cooking requirement. According to the Rabbanon, you were allowed to leave something on a fire as long as it was nespashal called sarcha, it cooked completely, and if it was metztamik v'yafale, the more that it cooks, the worse it'll get. And water is something which is nespashal called sarcha, I mean it was boiled, Erev Shabbos, and the more it cooks, so the more it'll evaporate, so it's metztamik v'raloi. So what's the problem here with a hot water kettle? So some answer that a hot water kettle is considered hatmana, because if you have coals either on its perimeter or in the inside, as we'll see in a second, the water that's in this kettle is considered mutman, is considered concealed, or actually it's considered insulated by the heat source. So consequently, the mulyar hagaruf, so it's called hatmana, but it's hatmana b'davar she'en ma'asav hevel. Hatmana b'davar she'en ma'asav hevel mi'erev Shabbos is mutter. So therefore, you're allowed to drink the water on Shabbos. But with this antichi, we'll see that it's ma'asav hevel. So if you do hatmana in an antichi, which is ma'asav hevel, so it's also to drink from it on Shabbos. But I'll explain a little more in a second. But the first thing is we have to differentiate between shia and hatmana. The shia is okay, but this is hatmana. Why is it hatmana? Because the water is contained completely by the hot water container. What's called a mulyar? Tanu, we learned in the Brayso, the water is inside the pot, and the coals are in a container outside. So once you take the coals away from the container outside, this pot, even though it's quite hot, but it's losing its heat quickly, and that's not called ma'asav hevel. So therefore, now when it comes on Shabbos, you're allowed to drink from it because the water was in a container which only was keeping it warm, but was not ma'asav hevel on Shabbos. What's an antichi? Here we have a dispute. Rabba Amar Beikiri. Rabba says that it's a container which fits inside a stove. The stove has coals, or even if you take the coals out, but the walls of the stove are very, very thick and they retain heat. So therefore it's ma'asav hevel. So if you had a pot in there which was in this antichi, even though if you took the coals out, the walls are still ma'asav hevel, and if you had water in a place where it's ma'asav hevel in the Erev Shabbos, it's also, and it was hatmana. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says that it's beidudi. It's a special type of keli which holds water, like a kumkum, but on the bottom it had a false bottom, and under the false bottom they had coals. Now, when it has coals under the false bottom, it seems it's still not quite as hot as having a container of hot water in a stove, because the stove's walls were so thick and so insulative that it retained heat for a long time, and therefore it's considered much more ma'asav hevel. So that's the strongest ma'asav hevel. So again, the mulyar, where you have coals on the outside, and once you remove the coals, that's the least ma'asav hevel. The second level is beidudi, this container that has coals on its false bottom. That's the second level. That's already is ma'asav hevel, maybe. And this beikiri container that's in the stove, and the stove has very hot walls, that's for sure ma'asav hevel. So man damar beidudi, the one that considers beidudi, the one with the false bottom, ma'asav hevel, is kolshken beikiri. Certainly the container in the stove is ma'asav hevel. Man damar beikiri, one that says that beikiri is also, that's because the stove really is ma'asav hevel, aval beidudi loy, but this container that has the false bottom is not. So in the mulyar is certainly only mekayim hevel. Well, let's learn a little more. Tanya kavos Rav Nachman, we learned the Brayso which agrees with Rav Nachman. Antichi afal pisha grufa ktuma ein shoysen amena. An antichi, even though you rake the coals out, you can't drink from it. Neshenechushta mechamemta, because the bottom is still hot. So you see that we're talking about the bottom of this hot water container, which has a false bottom under it. That even when you take the coals out, the bottom is still very hot. So bottom line is that the mulyar, which has coals around this perimeter, once you take those coals out, it's only mekayim hevel, and mekayim hevel there's no problem of atmana mi'erev Shabbos. But if you have an antichi, whether it's a container inside a stove, so the walls of the stove are ma'asav hevel, or it has a false bottom with coals, which is also, according to the Gemara, ma'asav hevel, then it's also, even though you took the coals out, you did atmana, something that's ma'asav hevel. Hamechem shepinahu, we'll see what that means. If you have a hot water kettle that was cleared, I'm not explaining the Mishnah because we'll wait for the Gemara. You can't put in cold water for the cold water to become hot. But you can put cold water into the mechem in order to make it lukewarm, or into a cup in order to make it lukewarm. My Kamar, what is the Mishnah talking about? So Rav Ada Bar Masna has the first pshat. He says, Hachi Kamar, Hamechem shepina mimenu mayim chamen. If you have a hot water kettle that you took all the hot water out, La'itan l'toichan mayim mu'atim. Don't put in a little bit of cold water kadei sheyichamu, because it'll get warm. Why? Because it's going to actually boil the little bit of water. The kettle that you empty that water from is hot enough to boil your water, and it'll reach the shear of Yatzeh Letesba, says the Ritva. But you can put a large amount of cold water into that empty hot water container, because a large amount of cold water is not going to get hot. The Gemara asks, I have another problem. Putting in a lot of cold water is fine, but the problem is that since the pot becomes soft and heat, then when you put cold water in it, it hardens it. So when you're hardening it, you're making this keli, you're being misaken the keli on Shabbos. So according to Rav Ada Bar Masna, it's a davar shem eschav, and it's not your intention here to make the pot strong, and therefore, and it's also not a psik reisha. First of all, this pot had been strong already in the past. We're not convinced that the pot got so hot that it softened. So therefore, it's not sure that pouring the cold water will make it strong, and therefore you're allowed. Maskiv Abaye has a technical issue with Rav Ada Bar Masna regarding language. Midi meichem shepina mimenu mayim ktani. Did the Mishnah say it's a hot water kettle that you took the water out? Meichem shepino ktani. It said it's a hot water kettle that was taken off the fire, but it still has hot water in it. Elam Abaye explains the Mishnah differently. Hachi kamar. Hameichem shepino. If you took the hot water kettle off the fire, v'yesh b'mayim chamin, it still has some hot water. Don't put in a little bit of cold water so the cold water gets hot, because that's bishul. That's what we have when you open up the hot water faucet on Shabbos. What you're doing is you're allowing cold water to go into your hot water tank, and it's boiling it. But you can pour a lot of cold water into that hot water kettle, which will make everything lukewarm. But now you can imply that since this whole discussion in the Mishnah was taking off a kettle with hot water off the fire, that you can't put in a little bit of cold water, but you can put in a lot. But then meicham shepino mimenu mayim. But if you have a hot water kettle that you emptied it from the water altogether, then you're not allowed to pour cold water into it. Why? Even though you're pouring a lot of cold water, which will make the water only lukewarm, because now you are going to harden the keli. And according to Abaya, the Mishnah is Rabbi Yehudi. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Damar Davar Shem is Chavan is Aser. They're doing something unintentionally is Aser. So according to Rav Ada Bar Masna, he emptied all the water out, and you can put in a lot of cold water, and we're not worried from Mitzaref because we hold like Reb Shimon, Davar Shem is Chavan is Mutter. According to Abaya, it's speaking where you have still hot water in the keli, so to put a little bit of cold water you can't. Put in a lot of cold water you can, but if it was totally emptied, you can't even put a lot of cold water, because putting a lot of cold water will strengthen the keli. Amar Rav, so Rav says, Lo Shanu, when the Mishnah allows you to put cold water in, it's Elo Lahafshir. It's only if you have hot water in the container, and you want to put in a little bit of cold water to make it lukewarm, it's okay. Aval Tzaref, but if the container was emptied, and now you want to fill it with cold water, Aser, it's Aser, because Rav holds like Abaya, that if you fill it with cold water, you'll be Mitzaref, and Davar Shem is Chavan is Aser. Shmuel says even if you empty the container of all its hot water and you pour in cold water to make it strong, you're allowed to. If your intent is to pour in cold water to make the container strong, is that allowed? A little adjustment. You're allowed to put in cold water into this hot water container that's empty only if the cold water is going to become lukewarm. But don't fill it with cold water to the top. Aval shir l'tzaref, but if you fill it with cold water to the top, which will now strengthen the keli, it's aser. Why? Because we all like Rabbi Yehuda, Davar Shem is Chavan is aser. Shmuel Amar Shmuel said, fill it shir l'tzaref, even if you fill it to the top with cold water, mutter it's allowed. Why? As long as it's not your intention to strengthen the keli. Because Davar Shem is Chavan, according to Shmuel, is mutter because you also like Reb Shimon. So we caught up in Amid. Slowly but surely, I hope we'll catch up maybe an Amid at a time, and hopefully catch up. Kol Tov, Agitavach, everybody should have a very healthy summer. All the Chaylim should have refuah, and all those that are healthy should stay safe. Whatever we've been doing to stay safe, Hashem should help us continue that.